Okay. It's been a while since I've done a video, but this is just something that I had to bring up. Now, I've watched a lot of videos on LeBron and I guess his career journey or whatever you want to call it. Um, I've been watching LeBron for a long time. I've only been an NBA fan since maybe 2002 ish. I think the first time I was actually interested in the NBA, I watched the Detroit Pistons upset the Lakers in the finals. I was new. I didn't know who anybody was. Didn't know who Tayshaun Prince was. Didn't know who Chauncey Billups was. Barely knew who Shaq and Kobe were. But I got into the NBA after that. Huge Boston Celtics fan. Um, But the reason why I'm making this video is because LeBron James, who has been the most polarizing athlete in the NBA for the past 20 years, 30, probably like 20, 25 years as far as basketball goes. But he has been a very polarizing athlete. Um, and although I think LeBron James has a Hall of Fame career, obviously, I think he is one of the top 25 best NBA players to ever play the game. And that's not me saying he's around 25. I'm saying out of the 25 basketball players you can think of, LeBron James is definitely in that group. But I do have to say this. I 100% believe the NBA aided and orchestrated a bunch of events that happened in LeBron's career. And one that I'm not going to bring up, but I think should be a discussion, even though people have been shooting it down and denying it and pretending like it didn't happen. But LeBron James's name popping up on that steroid report where there was labs in Miami or whatever, and his name was on that list. And but people pretend like it didn't happen, even though he was a. And I'm not saying there aren't people who were young not losing their hair and all this stuff. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But the fact that this dude rarely got hurt, if he ever got hurt, and I still don't believe LeBron gets hurt. Because, listen to me, every time LeBron gets hurt, he always comes back. And I remember one game he played after his return. I think it was his first major injury where he missed 4 weeks. 4 months, something like he missed something. It was an extended period of time, and he came back. He had a groin injury. His first game back, he played 40 minutes, and I think I did a video about this. There's no way you play 40 minutes after coming back. Your first game back from a groin injury. Anybody with a groin injury would know that it's really hard for you to fucking move, and it takes a minute for you to fully recover. So you mean to tell me that this guy, being a professional basketball player amongst other superior athletes, played 40 minutes, and his stat line looks how LeBron's stat lines always look? You know, he scored a significant amount. He rebounded a fair share. He assisted a fair share, you know, and he played 40 minutes of NBA basketball. How impossible is that? But apparently he does it. And I've said for years, man, I honestly believe the bubble was that whole situation with the bubble was created so LeBron, AD, and the rest of that Lakers team could be healthy. Because I'm telling you, if the season wouldn't have stopped, AD would eventually got hurt, or I think the Lakers would have just failed. I mean, because LeBron, he gets tired by the end of the season. This is why, it seems like always at the end of the season, it seems like he always flames out. You know, and that's usually because his body is fucking tired. Playing so many minutes, playing so many games. This is why you see LeBron get hurt. He always gets hurt after the All-Star break. Sometimes he'll get hurt before, but it's never for long. But most of the time it's after the All-Star break. He'll get hurt. He'll miss like a month or two, and then he'll come back after, not after, damn it, before the playoffs are about to start. And he always comes back. And I've noticed this for like 3 years, maybe 4 years or whatever, where since he's been on the Lakers, definitely, where he'll get hurt or they'll say he's hurt, but for some reason he always comes back right before the playoffs start. Now, a couple times that didn't work because they ended up missing the playoffs his first year in LA, and I think the year after they won the NBA championship, the shortened season, I think they missed the playoffs then too, or got to the play-in. I'm getting those years like all jumbled up, but it's always the same narrative. He'll get hurt with some. It's an injury that's going to keep him out for a little bit of a minute, but it's not something where it's not as significant. So people be like, well, why is LeBron sitting out so long if it's such a minor injury? So it's always probably something like a pulled something, a sprained something, or something. He never has a tear, nothing. It's always something that keeps him out long enough for him to rest, but he always comes back. It always happens like that. And but again, like, those are just a couple of things off the top of my head outside of what I'm going to talk about right now, where I've noticed that the NBA and the way they deal with this is very different. Now there are three things that I want to talk about. All right, this first one is going to be the Miami Heat Oklahoma City playoff series, and how the officiating was so lopsided. The free throw discrepancy was so lopsided. I've watched, there's a video on YouTube that has a compilation of the calls that shouldn't have been called against the Thunder and the calls that should have been called against the Heat but weren't. I mean, I'll probably put it in the, if I remember to, I'll put it in the description of the video that I'm talking about. But that series was one of the worst officiated series I've ever seen, and this is the series after a year after one of the worst playoff series by a superstar player that anybody's ever seen. The Dallas Mavericks series, where LeBron came up so incredibly fucking small that they just couldn't overcome Dallas Mavericks team that just wasn't on their level. And I think LeBron losing two series back to back, because I'm telling you, man, I honestly believe that Oklahoma City Thunder team was good enough to win that title. You're talking about, you have Kevin Durant, who is an emerging superstar. You have Russell Westbrook, who at times is aloof when it comes to basketball intelligence, but he has the energy and the passion that you would want out of any great player. And you had a young Serge Ibaka, who was one of the best rim protectors at the time. I'm sorry, I'm rushing because I'm trying to hurry get through this shit. You have Serge Ibaka, one of the best rim protectors at the time, and you have Kendrick Perkins, who is he's not one of the best, but he is a very formidable low post big man, a paint beast, so to speak. He is one of the more effective ones. He won a title with the Boston Celtics, playing alongside Kevin Garnett. They had a great bench. You had Derek Fisher, Thabo Sefolosha. I don't know if they had Reggie Jackson at the time. I'm not sure when they got Reggie Jackson. He might have been on the team. I can't remember though. But you had great talent on that team, and then you had James Harden, who I think he won Sixth Man of the Year that year. You have James Harden on that team. That team was more than good enough to beat the fucking Miami Heat. But the NBA and LeBron could not afford him to lose two NBA after he just came out a year prior to this and said that they were going to win a significant amount of titles. So you can't lose your first two championships on your first two go-arounds. It could not happen. And the NBA has a history of maneuvering series to go a certain way. And the world famous Lakers versus Kings, you know, they have a history of this. So LeBron has definitely had help, man. He's had significant amount of help. And this is why I don't think he'll ever be the greatest player ever. I don't think he'll be considered the greatest player ever because there are far too many points in his career where he has failed or come close to failing. Like every single championship they won, that LeBron has won, you can make an argument that he should have lost those series, but he didn't. Okay? You can make great arguments for it. And most of it is officiating, you know? So this is just go look up this series. This series is one of the worst officiated series we've ever seen. I mean, incredibly lopsided. Like look at this article right here. Fans go crazy as Miami Heat set NBA record for free throw attempts. Breaking down the officiating on the refs favoring Miami. So that certainly has some merit to it. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of LeBron. I'm not a fan of LeBron at all. I think that he is a smart and shrewd businessman who has a lot of powerful people in his ear, giving him great advice, I'm pretty sure, and he's utilizing it because for some reason, man, this dude has an army of supporters that are willing to die on the hill for him. So, okay, number 2. The Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers got 3 number 1 picks in 4 years. After LeBron left in 2010, 2011, the Cleveland Cavaliers got the number 1 pick. They had a 19% chance to get the number 1 pick. That team was awful. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Like it's not unbelievable that they would get the number 1 pick or have great odds to get it because that team was just terrible. So they got the number 1 pick and Kyrie Irving is drafted, which is weird to me because Kyrie Irving played 1 game for Duke. He missed the entire year with an injury. But apparently that 1 game he had and people's supposed potential of him was enough for them to draft him at number 1. Okay? They had a 19% chance. Remember that. Okay. They didn't get the 2012 pick because the New Orleans Hornets got that one. They got Anthony Davis. 2013, they had a 15% chance to get the number 1 pick. 15. That's 4% below where they were in 2011. Okay? And I'm guessing they should have been around 5 or 6 or somewhere around there as far as picks go. They got the number 1 pick, which, again, it's not the craziest to say that, you know, it's not that unbelievable that they got the number 1 pick, right? So they got that pick and they got Anthony Bennett. 2014. Now, this is where shit gets shady. The Cleveland Cavaliers had 19% in 2011, 15% in 2013. So, with that team being bad, you would think that they would have anywhere between 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14%, because, you know, the odds are going down. No, this team had a surprising 1.7%. They had a 1.7% chance to get the number 1 pick. 1.7. Not 7.1. not any other number between 15 to 5. Not 4 either, not 3, not 2. They got a 1.7% chance. The chances of them getting that number one pick, realistically, should be the same amount as probably, I don't know, man. Like better, it's definitely better odds, but still around the same, I would think, of somebody hitting the lottery, right? Like an actual regular person hitting the lottery. It's not good odds. You wouldn't bet your money that they are going to get the number one pick. You wouldn't, like you wouldn't bet money at 19 because you're just not sure. Definitely not at 1.7. But they got the number one pick again. And this is where I was confused because at 1.7, man, they shouldn't even crack the top 5 if I'm being, like, not even close. Like, they're probably at like 9, 10 maybe. Wherever they're supposed to be, I think they're at 9 right here. That's probably where they pick. But they got the number one pick and they take Andrew Wiggins. Okay? Andrew Wiggins coming out of college. Or, yeah, he was in college. Shit. I don't know why I started going somewhere else with it. You take Kyrie Irving, who is one of the better prospects coming out of the 2011 draft, and you get, luckily, even though Andrew Wiggins, he didn't do shit for Cleveland, he didn't do much for Minnesota, but he managed to revitalize his career in Golden State. He was one of the athletes in 2014 where people were looking at him like he was going to be the next transcendent athlete. You know, he was supposed to be the next guy up. But it didn't work out that way. But still, at that time, when this draft was happening, Andrew Wiggins was a no doubt number one pick. And they got him. All right. Now, after all this is done, and people just completely fucking ignored the fact that this team got the number one pick in 3 times out of 4 years. And the last time they got the number one pick, they had absolutely horrendous odds and still managed to get it, even though people ignore that. All 3 picks will play a role in Cleveland getting their first championship. Because Kyrie would develop into one of the better players, a top 20 player in the NBA. Skill-wise, no matter how you feel about him. And Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett were traded with a bunch of other shit to Minnesota for Kevin Love, who at the time, people forget that Kevin Love was a damn near all-NBA basketball player. I mean, this dude was fucking phenomenal. Even if he was on a bad team, he was a phenomenal talent, a 2020 threat every single night. I mean, this dude could do everything. He could rebound. I mean, he wasn't probably a great defender, but I mean, he probably wasn't a slouch either. He was a great scorer. He could spread the floor. He was a 3-level scorer. Okay, probably not a high volume 3-point shooter, but that he was knocking them down. You know, dude was a force, man. And he may not have been winning in Minnesota, but he gave the Timberwolves a reason to watch. Timberwolves fans a reason to watch. And they traded a bunch of stuff, including those 2 of those picks that they got, Andrew Wiggins, Anthony Bennett, to Minnesota for Kevin Love. And LeBron comes back. And now you have a newly formed Big 3 in Cleveland that eventually won the title. All right. Last but definitely not least is LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Kevin Kevin. Jesus, I'm thinking about Kevin Love. Chris Bosh. All three of these top 20 players colluding with each other to join up in Miami. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because it's obvious tampering. You have three of the better players in the NBA who are all friends, who were all drafted the same year, coming up with a plan to team up. Because Chris Bosh wasn't going to win any titles in Toronto. LeBron, with the state that Cleveland was in, wasn't going to win a title there. And Dwayne Wade has already won a title, but even though Dwayne Wade was a big piece of that, you got to give it to the fact that they had a great bench. Shaq, even though he was on his last legs, was still a pretty big deal in NBA. And they got some great, he got great help from that team. And it wasn't that bad that Dallas was not ready. They wasn't ready. Because Dallas was always that team that was, they were going to make the playoffs. They were going to make you think that, they're contenders. But they just couldn't get it over the hill. They couldn't find that gear that they needed to win. They eventually did in 2011, and Dirk Nowitzki got his payback back. But they wasn't ready in 2005 or 6, one of those years. And Miami won it. And Dwayne Wade had a phenomenal series. Not to take anything away from him, but to say that team was not a well put together team, I'm sorry. You can't go that far. I think Dwayne Wade had a lot more help than people are willing to admit. And Dwayne Wade is my favorite player. I can't think of any other player that I'd love to watch more than Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade is my favorite fucking player. But I will say that if not for Shaq and that bench and all those dogs that he had around him, I don't think they would have won. So after that, and after Shaq leaves, Dwayne Wade is he's a great player. And he's he's the true definition of a stat sheet stuffer. But his team isn't winning anything. They're making the playoffs, but they're not really putting a dent in nothing. And you had Detroit still at the top of their game. You had Boston emerging. And you had Orlando becoming them. And you still had Cleveland that was still in the mix. He wasn't able to get that team without Shaq and without the rest of those guys past anybody else. So, they all needed each other. And they colluded to get the job done. But my issue with this is obvious tampering. And the NBA should have did something about it. Case in point, Chris Paul. Now, as you've seen on the screen, I have this up. Chris Paul's trade to the Lakers was stopped because the NBA put a stop to it. The proposed trade would have sent Chris Paul to the Lakers, Pau Gasol to the Houston Rockets, and Lamar Odom, Luis Scola, Kevin Martin, Goran Dragic, all in their own respect, all fantastic role players. And a 2012 first-round pick to the Hornets. The NBA commissioner, David Stern, who was also overseeing, which is weird, because how often do you see a commissioner of any professional sports league pretty much be the boss of a fucking franchise? Who was also overseeing the New Orleans Hornets due to their ownership situation, decided to veto the trade. He cited basketball reasons for his decision, suggesting that the trade didn't make sense from a basketball perspective for all the teams involved. So you're telling me The Lakers sending Pau Gasol to the Rockets, which Pau Gasol at that point was still a really decent big man at the time. Better than anybody that I think the Houston Rockets had at that point. Yao Ming, I think, was already retired. Tracy was already out the NBA. They didn't really have anybody else. And I think Pau Gasol, he might not have turned that into a championship contender, man, but they would have been, a decent team. And the Houston Rockets, they send Luis Scola, Kevin Martin, and Gordon Dragic. Was he on the Lakers? I think he was on the Lakers at that point before he went to Houston. But I'm not sure. I would have to look that up. I forgot where he was before he got the Phoenix. I have to look that up. But Luis Scola, Kevin Martin. Kevin Martin at that point in his career was a pretty good player. He might not have been a superstar player or even a star player, but he was one of those streaky players that when he was on, he was on. And dude could fill up the scoring sheet pretty fucking well. Even with his unorthodox jump shot. And Luis Scola may not have been a really great talent, but Luis Scola off the bench was a fantastic player. Gave you everything you needed from a big man coming off the bench. And the Lakers would send Lamar Odom to the Hornets, which Lamar Odom was still a pretty decent six man. And Chris Paul would go to the Lakers, which would have made the Lakers a championship contender. So you have Chris Paul going to the Lakers. You have the Lakers sending Pau Gasol and Lamar Odom to two different teams. And I think Gordon Dragic to two different teams. And you have Luis Scola and Kevin Martin. And I think I don't know who's the 2012 first round pick from. But you have all these pieces going to these teams. And it seems like a pretty sensible trade, man. Chris Paul obviously is the gem of the trade. But you also have Pau Gasol, who is a pretty solid piece. And you have a bunch of really good bench players, role players, going to the Hornets. And a first-round pick going to the Hornets. I think everybody wins. I'm pretty sure Houston freed up a lot of salary cap. I think everybody wins in this trade. This seems like a ridiculous reason, and CP3 seems so unlucky. Look, they stopped that trade for some reason. I don't know if it has something to do with the Lakers. I don't know the reason exactly, but they stopped the trade. Why didn't they stop the Miami Heat deal? Why didn't they say, no, this does not feel right. We cannot allow 3 of our top 15 to 20 whatever players. 2 of them are top 10. Bosh is somewhere between 11 and 20. 3 of our top players in the league form a fucking super team. That would be unfair to everybody else. Thank goodness LeBron is such a head case because it didn't work out the way he wanted it to. He lost his first NBA Finals in embarrassing fashion. He almost lost another NBA Finals to a younger team who wasn't perceived as, as good then, as good as. But he almost lost two of the first finals that he made. He almost lost both of them. And the NBA had to step in. They had to do something about that. And then he won that one. Then he won the next one against the San Antonio Spurs, which I still think is one of the worst coaching jobs I've ever seen in a closeout game by Greg Popovich, by taking out Tim Duncan at the most important possession of the game and putting Boris Diaw in the game. And then he eventually lost the finals the year after that when Kawhi Leonard won the MVP. So his stint in Miami was somewhat of a failure. I mean, yeah, they got 2 titles out of it, but the expectation was that this team was going to be a contender for like the next 7 years, even if they don't win every year. I'm pretty sure a lot of people expected them to win at least 4 championships, and they didn't. But you know, so that's the video, man. It's kind of longer than I wanted it to be, but I gotta say, LeBron James, out of any player in the history of the NBA that I've ever seen, gets assisted more. And there's more examples. These are just the most notable 3 that comes to my mind. These are 3 that people don't talk about that I think should be discussed when we're talking about the greatest basketball player ever. These are 3 instances that should be fucking discussed, and they're ignored. So that's it, man. All right.